Good morning, Bardstown and Nelson County, and welcome to another edition of Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you on this rather frigid Wednesday morning here in beautiful downtown Bardstown. There's sun shining outside, so it's the sun making the snow light up. So be careful and don't get snow blinded from the reflections from the snow. There's still a surprising amount of snow on some back roads and streets, Margie.
Well, yeah.
But I did see. Now I live on Old Louisville Road, which was part of the old 31E, and I didn't run into it, but passed a county salt truck / snowplow. And so by that time, most of the snow had melted or was slush. So, but today it shows the evidence of being plowed. The road was absolutely clean. So, appreciate the work of the Nelson County Road Crew. It's all their work is always welcome, and they work long hours.
And they're out when the rest of us can't be.
That's right. And kudos to the crews, because I know that they've got a number of new employees who had never run a snow route, and so they did several dry runs so their folks would know the route. So,
right.
Anyway, it looked like it was a successful operation. And I hope the snow is done for the year, though I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, I hope so too. And if you can catch one of those snow plows, maybe they can come do my driveway, because I can't get out of it.
Well,
I'm only here because of you willing to come by and pick me up.
Well, yeah, you used to be able to have a young neighbor who would shovel a driveway, but as you get older, you have fewer young neighbors willing to do that.
Exactly.
Or your young neighbors are the same age you are.
That's true.
And so, it's like, well, you ask their kids and you ask their grandkids. So,
well,
anyway.
and if it's a big driveway like mine is, I mean, you couldn't do it by hand. You'd give out before you got half of it done.
Well, I don't know, Margie. I tell you, if you offered some kids the right amount of money, they would at least
make a stab at it.
Make a stab at it, I think. Just have some hot cocoa ready for them, especially on a day like today.
Oh boy, you'd need a whole bunch of hot cocoa to.
Just a reminder: these bitter cold temperatures, just the slightest bit of wind creates some really cold wind chills. I think at home it was 11 above, and then the wind, the feels like temperature was 0. So that's, you can get frostbite pretty quickly if you have skin exposed to the air. So be careful when you're out and about. And I say that, Margie, and I went out to the car and I got ready to leave, and I realized I'd left my gloves in the car. So, like that. Doctor, heal thyself. I'll give good advice. I should take it.
We all do that, Jim. I hate to tell you.
Well, Margie, today we're going to talk about the General Assembly. They're back in session, and this is a big budget year, and this is a really important session. And
yes, it is. And
we have Senator Higdon, who is head of the Transportation Committee. And we're really hoping that that the state will advance funding for some of the road projects here in Nelson County. So we'll just have to wait and see how things happen at the end. Margie, you and I talked about this before, back in November. The League of Women Voters had a study that they released in November about transparency.
Yes.
And they were critical of some of the practices of the General Assembly regarding fast tracking.
Yes. And
that's a practice of kind of circumventing the rules of the process of passing legislation. And this usually happens near the end of the session. when they're in a hurry to get things done. But this fast tracking process also, well, it prevents legislators from really reading and understanding legislation, and it also prevents the public from understanding what it is that's being discussed.
Right, and they do it more toward the end of session, but they have done it early in the session on other times with legislation they knew was not going to be popular with the general public.
Right.
Or with a large part of the general public.
Right. Now, I think the Republican majority felt like they were being attacked, but fast tracking has gone on for years, regardless of which party was in control. However, in recent years, its use has really increased.
Right.
Now, there's a local part of this. Let's see, the report from the League of Women Voters of Kentucky found that the General Assembly has passed more and more bills using fast tracking, and that makes the process less transparent. Obviously, you can't. If things are done so quickly, the public isn't aware of it. How can you claim transparency?
Right.
All right. So there was a House vote in regard to regarding transparency concerns, and there was mostly, I think, I don't know what the exact vote totals were, but there were 5 Republicans who joined Democrats in this vote, and one of those Republicans was our own state representative Candy Massaroni.
Okay.
Because she agreed that that fast tracking is not the preferred way of dealing with legislation,
right.
Because it cuts the public out of the process, and she had told me that she and other members of the House sometimes had to divide up legislation among them and each read a section in order to try to understand what's being passed.
Right. And the recommendations of that study were lengthening the time between when a committee votes on a bill and when a committee makes a revision to the bill and when that same bill is voted on by members of the Senate. So they're just giving more time, which is what the original rules were anyway. Mm-hmm. So because they're just disregarding the rules.
Right.
And allowing for at least 3 readings before a bill is voted on by the members of the Senate.
Right.
And
not all at the same time.
Right. And that they're rushing these processes forbids public opinion and public comment.
Right. And now I can be pretty cynical when it comes to legislators' response to criticism. And I thought that House Speaker David Osborne brushed off the report from the League of Women Voters and called it a distortion, intellectually bankrupt, and statistically unsound. So, pretty much dismissed it as just so much pablum.
You mean because they followed the legislation of how it was passed?
Well, one of the things he cited was the fact that the study it looked at every other 60-day budget session between 98 and 2002 or 2014, I think. But anyway, yeah, he thought it was just the study was flawed, mm-hmm. and I think the implication here is that it was designed to make Republicans look bad.
Well, I mean, since the Republicans have been in power, the use of that process has grown exponentially.
Right.
So they probably had a good reason for that. And I wanted to give our listeners the number of the legislative message line if they wish to call in about this legislation or any others.
Right.
And the legislative message line is toll-free number 800-372-7181. 372-7181, and you can call and leave a message for any or all legislators concerning this or any other legislative action.
Right, and hearing from constituents is really, really important during the session, so that our state senators and representatives understand what people back home are thinking.
Well, they need to understand it themselves too, and you've
Right.
already established that from our own legislator that they don't have time to read the bills.
Right, right. But
And that means they're having to vote on something that they don't know all about, or the implications, or even all the details.
right, right. Right. Well, it's just a 60-day session, which it sounds like a lot of time, but really, the wheels of government turn slowly. And I remember, you may refresh my memory, Margie, but there was one time and I think they were right down to the wire last day of the session, and they stopped the clock.
Oh yeah.
In the chamber, so. To keep from running out of time.
Well, they should pass their ability to stay the passage of time on to the rest of us who are nearing the end of the line here. Let us know how you do that, and we can put it off as long as possible.
Well, of course, I can't remember the circumstances, but, it always seems that at the end of the session there's a mad rush to try to get things done. And I mean, that's when you have things like shell bills that legislation is inserted into.
Right, and so people, they end up voting on something, or the Reconciliation Committee.
Right.
That when they do that, they will they won't just pass what's there. They will end up adding something in or taking something away that the public and even their own legislators have not had a chance to read and know that it's there or that it's not there.
Right, and I think in some cases legislators will file an amendment in order to keep a bill from getting passed. You put something in
put
palatable.
a poison pill on it.
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of techniques that are used, and probably many more that I'm not aware of. But there's certainly a certain amount of gamesmanship when it comes to getting things through the legislature. I'm waiting for a book from someone, a retired legislator, to kind of clue us in on that. That'd be fascinating, I think. Or maybe, it's kind of like the old joke about, if you ever see sausage being made, you'd never eat it. Maybe that's the case here. If we get too close a look at the processes, we may never want to vote again. I don't know. Well, Margie, there's some other legislation I know that's in the hopper, and of course the state budget is the primary goal.
Right.
And, I think Jimmy Higdon's last update for week 2 of the session said that of course the Senate can't start any work until the House gets done. So anyway, that's job one, but there's still a lot of other issues to address.
Right. And let's see, we were talking about the budget. One of the things well, now the governor's already presented
Right.
His budget,
Right.
and so the legislature has not presented their budget. One of the things that the governor's budget calls for is a raise in teachers' pay,
Right.
an 11% raise in teachers' pay, and that from things I've been reading about, the legislature does not seem to want to do that. They want to have the local people give any raises. What's not taking into consideration is the fact that Kentucky's teachers are paid less than every other state around us, and some of them to the point of $10,000 less than in other states. And like I said, particularly those that are around us. The teacher's starting pay in Kentucky is $38,000, and Kentucky is 44th in the nation for starting teacher salaries. And an 11% increase for a starting salary would bring it up to $42,191. So it would make a difference for our teachers. I mean, we're having a difficult time getting teachers and keeping teachers because they can earn more in other states or doing other jobs that take less education for our teachers.
Right.
And the policy of saying, well, let the local people do it, means that it's more on that you're going to have to pay more in property, property assessments and property taxes in order to fund it at the local level. The legislature is charged with providing an equal education to all the children, public education to all the children in the state of Kentucky. And to put it back on the local people means that there are some areas that have very little tax base.
Right.
They do not have the tax base to provide that extra money. So to me, this says that the legislature bears the responsibility for that.
Now, Margie, I saw the governor's proposed teacher pay increase, but my question is that going to be state funding allocated, into the future, or is this at some point going to become a local responsibility? I think that the funding the raise is a great idea, but if it's going to end up eventually falling on the shoulders of local taxpayers, I think.
If they don't fund it, it's going to start out on the shoulders of local taxpayers.
Right. Well, I mean, if you know the trend in state funding since 2008 is more and more of a school district's funding comes from local sources.
Of course it does. I mean, the legislature likes to talk about, well, we are not reducing the SEEK funding.
Yeah.
They always fall back on that, which is a very complicated way of determining funding. But what they don't tell you is all the things that the state has ceased doing, which is like paying for helping considerably with the transportation. Right. Buses are horribly expensive.
Right.
And you have to have them. I mean, whether you live in a rural area, in order to get from someplace in the holler to the school, or whether you're living in Jefferson County where you've got schools all over the place and you have to get students to those schools, or whether you live in Nelson County where you do have a lot of rural areas.
Right.
So that's one thing. And the legislature they have not funded textbooks for 25 years.
Right.
or somewhere in that area. I mean, it is, they no longer will furnish textbooks. And that's just 2 areas.
Right.
But they have reduced funding, and they no longer pay for teacher education, teacher being able to update your learning and stay ahead of the curve. That used to be paid for by the state. It no longer is.
Right.
So there's so much that is not being paid for by the state now that if they're going to do it is on local shoulders.
Right. And the governor also proposed an 18% increase in SEEK money, which I'm sure that would be welcome at every district across the state.
Well, since we have to rely on that so very much.
Right.
Yes, I mean.
Right. But that's just his proposal. It doesn't mean you've got a Republican supermajority in the legislature. So, it may wind up being another year where they said, well, we protected it, and it's going to be the same as last year or just a little more or something. So we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out.
Well, this year, I mean, we have a big surplus in the budget. There's so many times in years past that when things have been brought up about teacher pay and other needed things in the Commonwealth, we don't have the money for it.
Right.
Well, we have the money for it, and it's time that we did something for our children. And that is to help provide them with teachers,
right,
to prepare them for the future, and by paying a decent salary to our teachers.
Right, and I think the governor also wants to have universal pre-K for all 4-year-olds as well, and fund that. So,
and I mean the evidence has been in for years about the of what an advantage early childhood education is. That how it much better prepares students, because if you can get children at an early age, you can get them at that time when they're little learning machines.
Right.
And if the time passes for them to get a lot of that information into their little brains, they don't do as well. There was a study done called the Perry Preschool Project, and it followed children for 20 years, and these children in the experimental group received a very high, a very good preschool education, and then they followed a group of regular students who did not get that quality preschool education, and they found out that more of them graduated from high school, more of them went to college, less of them were got into going to jail or being arrested, or the evidence is just out there that an early childhood education is not only good for that student, but it's good for the rest of us, because it makes more productive citizens coming into so early childhood education is so important. I would love to see that.
Well, I think and it really, the city school district could also kind of be the poster child for the benefits of early childhood education.
Well, the Bardstown Independent School District certainly has done that, and we established ours in 1985, I think.
Now I don't know if of course we remember House Bill 5 as the barrel tax bill from the last General Assembly. House Bill 5 this year is I think it's called the Safer Kentucky Act, and it's a collection of bills that were a collection of changes to basically increase penalties for certain drug offenses. And I know the Kentucky Policy, is that Kentucky Policy Institute? They've been really critical of it because from their point of view, increasing penalties isn't an effective deterrent to crime.
No.
Now the bill includes a couple things that I like, but I'm not sure it's a real deterrent if you're looking at it that way. For example, if you're a drug dealer, and you sell some drugs that lead to an overdose and death, you could be charged with with one of the variations of murder, manslaughter, murder, or some other charge, depending on the circumstances, and that would become a state law. And I don't know if that, again, you have to look at, are all these laws, are they really deterrents? Or do they just lock people up for longer periods of time?
Well, Americans and Kentuckians, I mean, we put more people in jail and we have more people in jail.
Right.
Percentage-wise than any other country. So we're really big on putting people in when we ought to be thinking about how to prevent things and prevent crime and prevent these things in the first place with better mental health care and with working more toward preventing something rather than what you do with them after you catch them.
Well, and also paths to help them. Nobody wants to be an addict.
No.
Nobody wakes up and says, well, I'm going to be an addict again today. But and fentanyl is, and I understand the reason to enact stiffer penalties on those who distribute and traffic in fentanyl and its derivatives. Right. But, where's the, and locally we've got groups that are working to address addiction, and but you would think that the state could also, the General Assembly could chip in some funding that would help that rather than increasing penalties that aren't going to help. Now, what I found interesting, because we just dealt with this locally, the bill also includes, House Bill 5 includes a section on unlawful camping, which is the proper term for homelessness, homeless people having to camp on public property.
Right.
And this would become a state law that would prohibit the homeless from camping on public property.
All right. So we're making homelessness a crime to the nth degree.
Right.
What are these poor people supposed to do? Just vanish into thin air?
Well, I don't. I don't think the bill addresses that, oddly enough, and I don't think any of them really have. I know that in other states, there were, and I can't remember. I did a deep dive on these laws on unlawful camping, the homeless, and in some states they can arrest you if you don't move on. And in other states, they have a provision that if there's some sort of shelter available, if the homeless person has to go to the shelter or can face a penalty. So, I mean, but the problem is, of course, shelters have their rules, and they're not going to take people who are alcohol or drug abusers or have violent criminal backgrounds.
Well, and there's another reason too, which I just had read about recently. The fact is that a number of these people have dogs or pets, but, and that the shelters won't let you in if you have a dog or a pet, and they don't. That's their companion. That's their their emotional support.
Sure.
That they risk freezing to death rather than leaving their animal out
Right.
to freeze.
Right. So anyway, House Bill 5 has a number of provisions. I don't know. I don't know what its fate will be, but it's basically. And there are several different provisions as far as tightening, making stiffer penalties. Let's see, and I think the ACLU, the Kentucky Policy Institute, others are critical of it. Because penalties don't solve either homelessness or drug addiction.
Well, I just refer them to the Bible.
Okay.
Well, it says that it says that we take care of the poor, and certainly you can't get any poorer than being homeless.
Right.
And these laws are saying you have no place to lay your head, you have no place to be.
Right, but then if it's kind of a catch-22 if you're in a community and your homelessness is becoming a problem in a public park or public space, and you don't have a law that gives police teeth to encourage people to move along.
But I still say, where are they to go?
Well, that's a great question.
I mean, if it's illegal to get on someone's private property, and it's illegal to be on public property, that's all the property there is.
That's right.
So, because you're homeless, you're going to be arrested. Because you're homeless, you have no place to go.
Right.
You continually walk, you can't sleep, you can't lie down, you can't sit. I mean, to me, that's heartless.
Well, we have seen, now the city and county both provide funding to organizations that work, with the homeless.
Right, and they work really hard.
Yeah.
And I know they do, and do a good job here in Nelson County. But you still have the issue that if you're not providing shelter, then and they have no shelter. I mean, on a nice summer night, I guess you could walk around and spend 2 hours here and 2 hours there.
Right.
But what are you going to do in the winter with this kind of weather? I mean, people die.
Well, that's right, and that's kind of something lacking from a lot of the ordinances about what's the alternative.
Right.
Is there an alternative?
Well, no, they don't give you they don't give an alternative.
Right.
So
well,
yes.
But in defense of municipalities and governments, they're just trying to deal with the problem.
Oh, I understand that. I understand that.
But and again, this question came up in fiscal court when this homeless camping issue was brought up there. I think it was Adam Wheatley said, well, are we fixing a problem or are we kicking the can down the road? And he never got an answer to that question because
of course.
It's pretty apparent
exactly.
what the answer would be.
Exactly.
But anyway, I really don't know what the best answer is in this case. The groups that work with homeless are doing the most work they can with what they have. Right,
and they're all. I mean, they get some help from. From the official sources, but a lot of it is just volunteers, people volunteering because they feel the same way that we have an obligation to help our fellow person.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah. I
would tell you that I can't say it enough. Kudos to to Mayor Heaton and Bardstown City Council, and to Bardstown Police Chief Kim Kressig for the decision to add a social worker
Oh,
to
yeah,
their team.
absolutely. That's terrific.
She spoke before fiscal court last night, and she's been just a tremendous resource for the whole community, not just for city
you're
residents.
right. And she brought her dog along.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we're starting to recognize what the presence of a dog or another comfort animal, so to speak, can have in diffusing a situation.
Exactly. Right.
Or giving comfort to people who are
in stress
in a mental crisis of. So yeah, I join you in those kudos.
Yeah, I think it's a case study that would show how beneficial that is at departments of all sizes.
Right.
Providing you have funding.
Right.
All right, Margie, we need to take a commercial break.
Okay.
And Margie and I will be back with more Bradford and Brooks in just a few moments. Please stay tuned. All right, you're back with Bradford and Brooks, Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford on this actually pretty beautiful, sunny, and bitterly cold Wednesday morning. Main roads are in good condition, by the way. You might see a slick patch. I would tell you one word of warning, though. Be careful on some of the turning lanes when we have streets with that are 3 lanes with a middle turning lane. Sometimes there's some ice and snow still in the middle. So just as is always the case in driving in the days following snow, just be aware of your surroundings. All right, Margie and I were talking about legislation that the General Assembly is considering, and we've been talking about House Bill 5, which is called, I think, the Safer Kentucky Act, and that does everything from increasing penalties on drug dealing, especially with fentanyl and its derivatives, all the way to making what's it called, unlawful camping.
Yes.
That would prohibit homeless people from camping on public property. So anyway, the bill has a lot of things in it, and without and also lots of complaints. I think ACLU, the Kentucky Policy Center, and other groups are critical of the bill, and not so much the fact, I think, that it's mainly the fact that it's focused on increasing penalties when I think there's a lot of thought that there more needs to be done for intervention and treatment. So,
right, and preventing.
Yeah.
Prevention rather than.
Right. Right, Margie.
All right. There's a bill, Senate Bill 99, which is called Hadley's Law, this was introduced by Senator David Yates of Louisville, filing a bill to adding exceptions to Kentucky's near total abortion ban for circumstances including rape, incest, the mother's health.
Right.
Because the current law only says that if the mother's life is at risk.
Right.
And in at least one instance I've read about a hospital telling a patient to go back out and sit in the parking lot until they felt like until they got worse.
Right.
Which is pretty ridiculous. But
well,
it's called Hadley's Law.
Right, and that's named after the young lady that appeared in the commercials that were focused on pointing out against basically critical commercials, campaign commercials critical of Daniel Cameron when he was
right. It was, but I mean, this is a very real young lady who was raped by her stepfather.
Right. And became pregnant by him too.
Yes, and became pregnant, and at a very early age, and the law's named for her. So yes, that is that is a bill that is up. And there is another bill, Senate Bill 10, which would let voters decide whether to push Kentucky elections back for statewide offices back a year to fall in line with presidential races. I can remember when that change happened, because it was, you know, it was just the fact that when you have a presidential election and you have the election for governor and all the state offices, it takes away from the importance of both of them.
Right, right.
And what it does is let you inject national politics into our state politics.
Right, right.
And they're not always the same.
Right.
So I mean, I can remember when it happened, because then you had people serving a year longer than they would have otherwise in order to...
some people got 5-year terms.
Yeah, to be able to do that. So personally, I'm hoping that that doesn't do well, because I don't think that it's in the best interest of the voters. Well,
is it a measure designed to try to save money by not having, you know, multiple elections, multiple years? Because I know seems to be a lot of concern about
that's what they say, but actually that the reason that it seems to be being done by the Republican majority is because Republicans, you know, the last few years have tended to do better in national elections, so they want to make all the elections about the national elections.
Well, Margie, we're down to about the 5-minute mark. Do you want to hear my prediction on Hadley's Law?
Sure.
Now, personally, I'm in favor of that.
Right.
I'm in favor of it, even though it was brought by a Democrat. But no, I think there need to be those exemptions. I just do.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's not going to stand a chance. Won't pass. And I will tell you why. Because for that very reason, it's a Democratic bill, and plus the fact that they named it Hadley's Law, which is a shot at. It can be perceived as a shot at the Republican governor candidate, you know, because I mean that campaign that commercial changed the dynamics of the campaign, and I think that, you know, and there's just part of me that says a Republican supermajority will never let that pass,
right?
Despite the fact I think it would be beneficial.
Yeah. Do you think that the legislature will ever get back to determining bills on what's good for the people instead of what's good for their party?
Well, you know what? I've always told you this. I'm in favor of divided government.
Yeah.
It wouldn't bother me if one house was Democratic and the state was or the Senate was controlled by Republicans. Or I kind of really prefer the way it is in Congress now. It's so close that it can change from election to election on who has where the balance of power is there.
Right. Well,
you know, because I mean and I think that it could change from election to election, and I don't know, maybe that's not the way to get things done. You know, if you have a
we've always had to try to have. I mean, we are supposed to. The way our legislature is set up and there is for a division of the powers,
right? So
that you don't have one part of the government overpowering the other parts of the government, and that's out of whack now.
Right.
There's very little balance in there.
Right, and that's true. And I think that you know, what's the old saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yes,
you know,
you're exactly right.
So yeah, I'm a fan of divided government, but I think I'm also a fan of compromise. And I think when you don't have to compromise, that kind of takes away, you know, from I don't know. I mean, it to me it makes the legislature less palatable to me if there's no interest in compromise, because we don't need to.
Right.
You know.
like I said, the interest of the public
Right.
doesn't factor in the equation.
Right, and let's see, and I would like to see more of that in our county school board too, but I'll leave that comment.
Well, that's
with
another
that.
that's another subject altogether.
That's right.
That would take another hour.
Right, and speaking of school board, you and I will host the superintendents of
both school districts.
Nelson County and the Bardstown City Schools next Wednesday.
Yes, we will,
And we'll be talking
and
school
they will
choice.
be exactly. Or more accurately, we'll be talking
fun.
about the bill which
Yeah.
purports to be about school choice.
Right, and of course the bill's about regarding placing a question on the ballot to change the state constitution.
Right.
So anyway, we'll be talking all about that next week. In the meantime, we got warmer temperatures supposed to be coming next week, Margie. At least
Hooray.
above freezing.
I hope it gets to where I can get out of my driveway.
Me too, but I'll be happy to come get you next week if necessary. So just let me know. All right, thanks for listening to Bradford and Brooks. Margie and I will be back next week at 11 o'clock, and you can catch our videos posted on the Nelson County Gazette or the Bradford and Brooks Facebook page. So you can just look up Bradford and Brooks on Facebook and you'll find us there. So everybody have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday with another Bradford and Brooks. Take care.